talking with you today about how to set up your outline. So this little video tutorial will hopefully get you comfortable with what the choices are for your outline. For your compare contrast essay, you have two choices that you can select to set up your outlining step. We have a point-by-point outline template, and we have a block outline template. The last couple of days, you guys have been working through your pre-writing. This is just to kind of flush out where you want to go with your essay and get kind of your main ideas laid out, along with some of those details flushed out. Now that you have that figured out, we can start plugging things a little more specifically into that outline. So each of you should have two topics that you're comparing and contrasting. Within those topics, you've come up with 3 points of comparison. So those would be those general overarching similarities. Those are written down in the middle of this handout. And then within those similarities, you've got 3 distinct topic or differences listed out for each topic in those points of comparison. So now what we're going to be doing is taking that information from each of those sections. So this first point of contrast, the second point of contrast, and the third point of contrast, and figuring out how to lay it out into an outline that would make sense for you as a writer as you disseminate the information you want to share, and also for your readers to understand. So your choices, we'll start with the point-by-point outline example. And both of these templates are on Schoology for you guys to start working with. But you can make a copy of this into your own Google Drive and then change up the language that you see there. So obviously we need to have your name and all of this information here on the left. Change the date so that it's appropriate for this year. First thing you want to lay out in both of your outlines, whichever outline or each of your outlines, is the thesis statement. So whichever outline you select, you're going to include your thesis statement at the very top. For the point-by-point, though, this is usually what students select. Most students will do this one because it almost makes more sense logically to lay out your points of contrast and then share the information for both topics so that you're kind of directly refuting or contrasting those topics right away. So with this outline, you'll see that Roman numeral number 1, we start out with the very first point of contrast. So if we look back at your pre-writing, you're going to take what's in this first middle box. That would be your first similarity or point of contrast. And you're going to write that down here after Roman numeral number 1. Then your capital A and capital B will be your 2 topics. Okay, so if I were writing an essay where I'm comparing and contrasting Asef with Scar from Lion King, I would start it with Asef. I'd put down my 2 details of difference, which come from the very left column and the very far right column. I say, so Asef shows his leadership style using verbal threats and physical violence. I would then go into my text and I need to find direct quotation that would help support those ideas, that shows where he uses verbal threats and shows where he uses physical violence, which is something you guys need to do in your outline as well. Then I move on to my second topic, and I pull out my 2 details from the very right-hand side, and I type in Scar uses manipulation in his leadership style. I'd find an excerpt from the text to show that, and subtle terrorism, and pull an excerpt to show an example of that as well. Then we move into the second point of contrast. Write that out after Roman numeral number 2, have your 2 topics laid out as A and B, and then those little difference details go underneath each of the topics. And again, you need to have a direct excerpt or passage or reference that would help show or exemplify what the difference is. Then your third point of contrast is laid out, same exact format. Okay, so like I said, a lot of students prefer this because you can directly talk about that or contrast that point of contrast right between the 2 topics versus what we do in the block outline, and I'll show you that now. So the block outline basically means you focus on an entire topic. So you talk about the 3 points of contrast within one topic first, and then you'll talk about the second topic with all 3 points of contrast. So here's the format for that. Again, your name, the class, and the date. You have your thesis statement laid out very first. Your first Roman numeral is going to be your topic number 1. So whichever character, symbol, relationship, whatever it is you've selected will be here. And then point of contrast number 1 would be laid out as capital A. Point of contrast point of contrast number 2 would be B, and point of contrast 3 would be C. Okay, so if I go back to the pre-writing, this first one would be A, second one would be B, third one would be C, and that's for the block. Then, just like the last one, we take those difference details from the very far columns on either side to fill in the details. And you need to find direct passages or excerpts from your text to support what that looks like or exemplifies those details. Then you move on to Roman numeral number 2, which is your second topic, but you have the same points of contrast laid out as A, B, and C, and then the details that you've come up with that indicate the differences between them, along with the direct excerpts. So we'll spend a few days in class on setting these outlines up. I want you guys to watch this video so that you understand the difference between the two and you kind of have an idea of which one you want to use. I'll be bouncing around class for the next few days to help you set these up with questions. This is also going to be the heavy hitting part of the essay because you have to go back into the text and find those examples to support your thinking and your reasoning for each of these points of contrast. And we need to find those specific details. Your final essay is going to require that you include direct excerpts, so it's important that you have those included in your outline. Okay, so select either the point by point or the block, and you can get going. Good luck.